everyone, and welcome to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne, a health marketing strategist at Imprella Communications, and I'm bringing you fascinating conversations with some of the industry's top marketing minds. Today's episode is about how to build an effective KOL program. As most of you know, KOLs are a critical component to many health marketing programs, as they can lend credibility and influence to enhance brand trust and your reach. By engaging KOLs effectively, brands can communicate complex information to both clinicians and patients, fostering education and driving adoption of your product or solution. In our conversation today, we'll talk about how to nurture relationships with KOLs and outline some key characteristics of an effective KOL program. To dive into this topic with me, I'm thrilled to welcome Julia Steele Rodriguez, who leads the market access, clinical and economic outcomes, medical relations, sales training, and trade shows and events teams for the breast and skeletal health division of Hologic. Julia has a background leading diverse teams in marketing, operations, revenue cycle, and clinical education in med device. Throughout this impressive tenure, she has helped build and nurture KOL relationships for various med device companies. Welcome, Julia. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a really important conversation for marketing leaders. KOLs obviously are, as I mentioned in the intro, a critical component of marketing programs. As we start off this conversation today, I think it's important that we have a shared definition of KOL. How do you define a KOL, Julia?
Great question. So my first answer obviously would be a key opinion leader. But in the context of talking about how you build a KOL program, I think it's really important that we ask ourselves and our organization what we think a KOL is. Because what I've discovered as I'm building and developing these programs is that there are often very different ideas about that. So it's really interesting to talk to different stakeholders, to even talk to the physicians that you have relationships with and understand kind of what they think of a KOL, and get that kind of mutual understanding and a place to start. So I think today in our organization, as we're looking at KOLs, we try to think of it as an objective definition of somebody who's influencing, beyond the walls of our organization, influencing with their peer or influencing their peer group, influential within their industry. It might be patients, as you mentioned. And in order to kind of have that objective assessment of who's influential, you need to look at objective data. And so looking at data sources like publications, participation in research, kind of determining what those objective criteria are.
Yeah, I think being aligned on clear definitions and expectations is really important, as you mentioned. And just anecdotally, I've seen some organizations use the term KOL to mean their own champion customers or influential customers. So that's why I want to start there so that everyone listening knows that for the purposes of today's conversation, you and I are using the term KOL to refer to someone who's influential among their peers broadly, not just within a brand or a company's own customer base.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how and where to find KOLs. What strategies do you recommend for identifying the right KOLs for your organization?
So I think once you figure out what you're hoping to accomplish with your KOL program, so if that's like rebuilding reputation in the market to get ready for launching a new product, you might be looking for a specific specialty, people with a specific type of expertise. So it'll be easy to identify who are the people doing research in this area? Who are the people speaking at major conferences about this topic? A lot of that information is easy to find, Google, looking at the major professional societies or conferences, scouring agendas, previous year's agendas, looking at leadership of these societies, who are the committee members, things like that. So just starting to get familiar with who tend to be the people that are either asked by their peers to speak or kind of in those prominent positions. So I would start there to kind of get a sense of who you're targeting. From there, spending some time where they are, you can kind of be in the wild with these people that you're looking for. So again, going back to attending conferences.
One of the things that really resonated with me that I remember you included in your outline was to not just look at like their CV or their resume of expertise, but to also look at the subjective measures. I found that to be a really important point.
Yeah, so the objective data is really important when you're determining the kinds of people that you want to engage with. So again, figuring out the specialty, what kind of experience you need them to have had. If you're looking specifically for people who have experience with research or publishing, who are well networked within the publishing community, those would be different places that you would look. But ultimately, how you are going to engage with these people can impact your selection criteria too. So for example, if you are looking for a specific expertise in order to get product feedback and you want to engage with these people with R&D, you might not be looking for somebody who's a great speaker. If you're looking for people who are going to be at the podium, who you want to engage with in sponsored medical education, you want to see them present. If you're looking for somebody who's going to come and help you train your sales force, or who is going to come and rally your troops or do some internal work, you're looking for somebody who's a little bit more motivational and friendly there. So I think it's, what is the work that you're hoping to do with them, and then finding environments for you to be able to assess their ability to do what you would be hoping to engage with them on. And then finally, you want to look for that fit and that personality that's going to make them easy to work with. So ultimately, if you're probably looking for, and I would encourage you to be looking to develop long-term relationships with these people. And so if either you or people on your team are going to be engaging with them on a regular basis, are these people who are going to turn in paperwork on time? Are they going to invoice you appropriately for payment? Are they good conversationalists in a dinner when you're having them at a dinner program? Like, are these people you're going to enjoy working with and developing relationships with? Are they easy to work with? So it's not only who do you target for a specific expertise, what are the skills that you want to see, but ultimately are these people that you want to work with and invest the time in developing the relationship with.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. I think it's so important to be looking at the subjective elements as well, not just their resume, their CV. Things like personality and fit for your organization is just so incredibly important, because when those things aren't a good match, it can create a lot of hurdles to getting good work done together. But also those things are going to be harder to sniff out initially because you're not necessarily going to see it on paper, right? And I love your point about sort of getting out there. And if you want, someone to have that charisma behind a podium, then go, watch them speak somewhere. I'm just curious, do you have any good vetting strategies to help identify some of those right fits when it comes to more of the subjective aspects of it?
Yeah, I'd say, two approaches are doing a little bit of research and poking around with people they engage with would be the first one. So, start with where you are and the people that you know, or the people that you have initially started building relationships with, and ask them not only who are the people that they see as experts in that field, understanding what you're hoping to accomplish or who you're looking for, but ask them, what they think. Is this somebody that is easy to work with? What is their reputation? Are they considered a good player in this space? So I think asking around, and, it's kind of like dating. Like, you want to check people out before you commit to them. And on that commitment piece, you don't have to jump all in. You don't have to get married right away. Like, can you start with some small engagements with low commitment? There will be missteps. There will be some people who seem great up front, or they might seem great for a particular purpose. So then as you see them, you might identify other opportunities. So I would suggest, starting small, let both sides kind of suss each other out too. Like, do they really want to work with you? And kind of take small steps.
The point you made earlier was about, this start small, but ultimately you want to look at, once you've identified these people are the right fit, you do want to think about this in terms of it being a long-term relationship, right? Because as an organization, you put a lot of time and effort into nurturing and cultivating these relationships. So as you think about that, how can companies foster that long-term relationship with their KOLs, making sure that it's mutually beneficial to them, beneficial to you? And how do you make sure that you're getting out of it what you need to get out of it for the company?
The mutually beneficial part is probably the most important thing here. Again, it goes back to being really clear on, what are you looking to accomplish? And if you're really clear about what you're looking to accomplish when you're going out there and interviewing or dating, you can, ask the right questions. You can assess needs and interests. The KOLs are getting as much out of this, possibly not, even more than you are. And I think I've learned that we tend to underestimate and undervalue what they're getting from the relationship. Now, of course, we're often paying them appropriately for their time and years of expertise and influence and, they're all of these skills that they've taken, years and decades to develop. And so that is one exchange of value. But they also recognize that, we're kind of in a new world where we have to partner industry and KOLs together. This is how most research is happening. They see the value and are interested in playing a part in influencing where organizations are going, how we're developing markets, how innovation is happening. So I think I've been really surprised with the curiosity of a lot of the KOLs. I assume that their interest was in, research and in publishing and in, those other more traditional benefits that we think of KOLs getting from engaging with industry. But where I'm having the most fun is learning they want a peek behind the curtain. They want to understand how organizations function, how we think about the market, how we decide when and where we take products to market. I think it helps, not for everybody, but I think there's a good number of people that just have that curiosity. So I found that to be very interesting to uncover when there is that, value in the relationship. And so some of our best relationships over the long term have been with people who have helped us progress and build the market and, develop products over time. So I think if you can find somebody who has that interest, those are the people you're more than likely to maintain long-term relationships with. One of the big watch outs I would say I've seen, and the reason why we say build a KOL program, we're probably not really building a KOL program from scratch. We're probably rebuilding. I think in most organizations, there are always physicians involved in that device.
Sure.
Relationships. Who is maintaining them over time is the question. And if you're building a new program, the answer to that is probably nobody, or somebody somehow the ball got dropped, right? So that's where, I challenge our teams to think about building the relationship, not between, it's not Julia and the KOL, or it's not the individual who's the primary contact and that person. It's how do we build a relationship with the company and the KOL? So in order to do that, I think that's another reason to give them a little bit more access into what your long-term goals and strategy are, and try to find those ways or find out what it is about your strategy that they're interested in, but also developing relationships at different levels, right? A lot of people or a lot of KOLs I find are very interested in spending time with our executives. They want to understand how they're seeing things at a macro level. So that's one level of relationship. They may want to engage, obviously, functionally with, with engineering, with R&D, with other areas like that. But I think it's really important to think just beyond the owner of the relationship and where can you build with the companies.
So many great points there. I think you're absolutely right that we give them more value than we're giving ourselves credit for. I've seen this to be true just in my world of marketing and PR and thought leadership. I've seen this to be true, but even the world you're talking about is even much broader than that, right? R&D and research. I mean, you're talking about peek behind the curtain, relationship with executives within the organization, talking about sort of how they see the future together and sharing those dialogues. So I think that is really wise advice for those people listening in, to really give ourselves credit for that, right? And really think about that as we're thinking about these relationships. Because this is a marketing podcast, I want to really kind of hone in on marketing with this next question. Can you give some examples of how effective KOL partnerships have influenced healthcare marketing strategies?
Yeah, I would say, at Hologic, this is our big success story in mammography, has been bringing 3D mammography to women as standard of care in the US. And it has been our partnership with KOLs, not only in research and publication, and of course the podium presentations and the evidence dissemination that comes from that, and obviously can only happen in partnership with KOLs, but also in payer initiatives, in again rallying the sales organization. It couldn't have happened without our very intentional partnerships with selected people to help us bring forward this new technology. So that would be like the most prominent example that I can give of, recently.
I know of Hologic, not because we've worked together, but because you guys are everywhere in the marketplace. And so I have to give a lot of credit to you and your colleagues in the marketing organization to really have put 3D mammography on the map. And as you've said, KOLs, your relationship with KOLs has certainly played a big role in that.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see the impact that bringing clinical voices, to on the Hill for, speaking with local, at the state level, the federal level, local governments, influencing policy to increase coverage. Like we underestimate how impactful those external and objective clinical voices can be. And, there's so much more we need to do. And talk about aligning objectives and passion. We couldn't be more passionate about it. And, an example of breast radiologists, they couldn't be more passionate about expanding access. So when you can align interests that way, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think there's this point about when we talk about aligned interests, it's aligned core values, it's aligned mission, right? Mm-hmm. Their interest in doing what's best for their patient and leading to the best possible health outcome and, detection early for if it's, breast cancer is so incredibly important. And that's the same mission and values that your organization has as well. And so when we're working together for that common outcome, I've seen that works incredibly well because we're rallying together around increased education, increased awareness of an issue to ultimately impact better outcomes in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've talked about some of the challenges that come along with building and maintaining KOL partnerships. Any others that we haven't mentioned so far that are worth calling out and how those can be overcome?
I think as you're building a program, looking for potential friction points internally is important. Things like contracting, invoicing, payments, communication, they're little things, but they quickly turn into the big things. I think having a smooth process there. Regular communication is important too, and that gets back to expectation setting. But where I've seen these programs fail and where I've heard just horror stories from KOLs that we've engaged with is when companies ramp up a program and they go gung ho, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and they get the KOLs excited about all of this work, and they do maybe one speaking engagement and run crickets, nothing. And, people, like we're saying, you get them all excited about this work that can be done, and then to not communicate, to not give regular updates. These are relationships that need to be maintained with clear expectations, regular communication, and just, respecting the human that's there, right? They want feedback also. And, one of the really fun things in building a KOL program is when you can help somebody build their career. If they're looking for more time speaking, they're looking to develop as a speaker, they're looking to do more research and just kind of build their brand and build their leadership within their peer group. It's amazing. If they're open to feedback and want to partner, that could be a terrific opportunity. I caution to be careful that somebody is open to feedback before you give it to them. But seek out those people again, as that comes down to like picking who you're dating. Not everybody will be somebody that you can develop over time or who wants to develop or is good taking feedback. But if you can find a couple of those, they're well worth the investment. I'd say same with a group that you could call like emerging leaders or rising stars. Who are the people that will be the KOLs in the future? So whether we're talking, 5, 10, 15 years in the future, and this might not be relevant for all organizations, but if you can build that relationship early so they get to know your company, again, not one person, but your company, you can help them develop as a speaker or as a presenter, or, help connect them with other people in the industry. Helping to build connections works both ways. That trust that builds over time, that relationship equity builds over time, and pays dividends, well into the future for both sides.
Yeah, you mentioned trust, and you also mentioned feedback. And as you were saying that, it dawned on me that ideally your organization wants the feedback to go both ways, right? And that comes down to having a relationship of trust and this ability, like a true relationship, right? Where your organization can give them feedback on how, things could be going better, what else they could be doing, but also for them to turn around and give your organization feedback as well. It has to be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. And that can be one of the most powerful uses too internally, especially depending on how your organization gets input in other ways, right? There are obviously times when you need different kinds of market research and feedback, but hearing from these influential customers, because they're almost always customers to some degree, can be incredibly important. That's also another kind of unsung benefit of these relationships, and it can be leveraged one-on-one or in an advisory board group setting is, what are the messages that the leaders in the organization need to hear? And who do they need to hear it from? Sometimes it can be incredibly powerful for them to hear a message that may be available other ways, but when they hear it come from key customers, it can have a greater impact. And so for that reason, also when you're looking at fit, you want to think about, are these the types of people that my leaders, that this organization wants to hear from and will hear from?
Yeah, great point. Of course, we have to talk about KPIs, right? So how do you measure the success of a KOL program, Julia? Are there any KPIs that are particularly helpful for evaluating the impact of these partnerships?
Yeah, so you have to be careful, obviously, with payments, and we're not directly measuring ROI on payments to physicians, of course. But when we look at the goes back to, again, what were we hoping to accomplish in the first place, right? I think there are easy measures of success with a KOL program. Initially, I think it's more anecdotal, where you start to see and hear from internal customers and external customers, whether it's change in sentiment. You can measure, share of voice, whether you're hearing more about your product. Those are a little bit more objective. I would say the subjective measures are the ones that are a little bit more complicated, but easier to come by.
Absolutely. Any final advice that you would give health marketing leaders looking to establish their KOL programs? And you said it earlier, maybe it's not established, but reestablish or rebuild their KOL programs.
Yeah, I think I've been through it, and I've spoken with a lot of colleagues. There are, it's very tempting to want to go big, and to look at, what is the database that I need to manage these relationships, or what is the software that I need that's going to give me the most up-to-date publication information and, give me visibility into how we're engaging with these people. I think, like most things, it doesn't need to be that complicated to start. And I think it needs to be iterative, especially if you're starting something that the organization hasn't done in a while. So I would caution starting small, be intentional. You can start with a small group and build from there. If you're picking a critical number of people to engage with who share the same desires, vision, value as you, and are willing to help you build a network too, that can be incredibly valuable. And so that time spent picking the first 2 people that you engage with will help you quickly expand and develop a program, rather than getting caught up on, we need the top 500 influencers in this field, and we won't stop until we have relationships with all of them. Not really necessary.
Yeah, no, I love that point. I think that's really important. Well, I'd like to switch gears here, Julia, for a special segment we call the Collective Quickfire. It's a fun way to end the episode here. I've got 4 questions for you. Are you ready for the Quickfire?
Sure.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't run away from something, run to something.
Ooh, that's a good one. How do you stay ahead of market changes and trends in the industry?
Oh, I can tie this one back to the subject. It's being curious and developing relationships with people who have different perspectives. And that's the most fulfilling part of engaging with KOLs and the work that this is part of the work that I get to do is, learning, being curious, and just, what are you hearing? What's coming? What's next? What should we be looking at?
Love that. What skills are important to you in your own professional development? What are some of the things that you're focused on?
I think it goes back to, again, just developing and maintaining curiosity, having some focus and discipline to set aside time each day or each week to be able to do that. And like I said, it could be building relationships and, the conversations that come from those relationships. But there's so much busyness. And if we don't take the time to be curious and to learn, that's a shame.
So true. Last question. What's the best podcast episode or book on leadership that you've read or heard recently?
I am a huge Adam Grant fan. So I would just say in general, on average, I get a lot from every single episode of his. And it's not all healthcare all the time, but I love that about it. It's just good human advice.
Same, yeah. So applicable to so many things in life, whether it's our career or parenting, right? There's a lot of great stuff that comes from Adam. Well, Julia, this has been really fun. Thanks for doing this with me today. How can listeners get in touch with you?
Well, these days, the only social media that I'm using is LinkedIn and Strava. So either of those will work. Love to see you on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, so many great insights from this conversation today. If you're feeling inspired, do us a favor and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for being part of the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. See you next time.